So we recently gave our Springboks starting lineup. Now we are giving our All Blacks XV. Now I will mention that a few of the players that I have put in here are currently injured, but they should be back by the time the playoff games happen of the Rugby World Cup. So I guess that is where we're basing this main lineup that we would go with off. But looking through at the front row, I believe that the All Blacks, the best option that they've got is number 1, Ethan de Groot, number 2, Cody Taylor, and number 3, the injured Tyrell Lomax. Now, until Lomax is back, though, just for argument's sake, I have got Tamati Williams as that tight head prop, and the benefit that he offers is he can actually play both sides. So worst comes to worst, if there is an injury to de Groot, which he kind of does have a little bit of a knock at the moment. So Tamati Williams, he's a bit of my cover going both ways, but Ethan de Groot, I feel that he's been very strong throughout the Rugby Championship and the rest of 2023 for the Highlanders. His scrummaging is solid. That last game up against the Springboks, we didn't quite see the best performance from the ABs overall, but I believe Ethan de Groot is still the right option to have at a loose head prop. For Cody Taylor, at the moment, he seems to be in just a little bit more consistent form than Samisoni Taukei'aho, although I wouldn't be one bit surprised if they did go with Taukei'aho as the starting number 2, and then number 3, like I mentioned, Tyrell Lomax. Currently got a massive hole in his knee, so that will need to be fixed, of course, before he gets any more game time. But I think that front row, something the All Blacks may look to use throughout this Rugby World Cup, and hopefully should be able to do pretty decently. But looking through now at the locks, number 4, he's injured currently, but he will be back at some stage. It is Brodie Retallick, who I would have in that number 4 jersey. Until then, though, I would actually put Tupavai in there. Now, that is probably a little bit of a surprise, seeing as they have got the option of Sam Whitelock as well. But I just feel like Tupavai, the impact that we've seen him have off the bench seems to be pretty substantial, as well as having that experience maybe of Whitelock coming off the bench later on in a game could do the ABs a lot of good. And then number 5, a man who is eligible to play for the first game of the Rugby World Cup. It is Scott Barrett. He has had an absolutely awesome 2025. We're not there yet. Awesome season so far for the All Blacks, as well as the Crusaders throughout Super Rugby Pacific. He almost ended up getting himself in trouble last week, which would have meant that he missed probably around 3 games of the Rugby World Cup, which actually would have put him in a very similar boat with how long Brodie Retallick is not going to be available for. But with the fact that Barrett can play, that is a combination I'll go with. Retallick and Barrett when Retallick's back. Until then, though, Tupavai and Barrett loose forward trio. This is somewhere else that injuries do slightly impact my decision making. Number 6, ideally for the All Blacks, I would have Shannon Frizzell. He has got himself a little bit of a leg injury currently, which is why he did not play in that last game up against the Springboks. I believe he's going to be back in time for the first game up against France, or it may actually be a couple more weeks after that before we get to see him back in action, which is a little bit of a hit for the All Blacks because they didn't take Summer Penny Finau into that Rugby World Cup squad. And I honestly feel that if he was there, he would be the second choice option at number 6. They have got Luke Jacobson in the squad though, so if Shannon Frizzell is injured, I would take Luke Jacobson as number 6. And to be honest, that is one of the only options the All Blacks have got there. It's a little bit concerning with the lack of injury cover that the ABs do have in that loose forward trio, as well as the lock-in positions, although we did see Josh Lord, he got added in a little bit later. Few other players still travelling with the side, just in case. But yeah, Shannon Frizzell would be my blindside flank. And number 7, controversially, it's always controversial with this position though, but number 7, I would go with the captain, Sam Cane. He may have struggled a bit in that game up against the Springboks, but I believe other than that, he's been relatively consistent. The question is whether or not he's been playing well enough, though, to match some of those other 7s that are currently playing around the world. It's a very tricky job to be the number 7. It's even trickier to be the captain alongside that. It's what I think that they're going to do. If Dalton Papali'i was in better form, I would take him ahead of Sam Cane in that starting lineup. But for now, the skipper gets that spot. And then at number 8, this is pretty much a one-horse race, seeing as the only other person who can play it is Luke Jacobson, and I've got him at 6. Although, to be fair, Dalton Papali'i can also play a little bit of number 8 if needed, but I've got Ardie Savia in this spot. Seems to be the best option for the All Blacks in that number 8 jersey. He offers the option to go off the back of the scrum, also has that ability to get the turnovers, and to be fair, he's probably got the most turnovers for the All Blacks when the opposition have been within 5 metres of the AB's line. Of course, you don't really want the opposition in that little section but Savia seems to just have the ability of getting those hands on the ball and winning the penalty for the ABs. So he might be one of the massive keys going into this Rugby World Cup. But now we move on to the back line. Number 9, I have got Aaron Smith. Huge amount of experience for him. Cam Roigard in that last game up against the Springboks looked like a real talent. We've seen him do that time and time again for the Hurricanes throughout Super Rugby Pacific. So for me, I would have Aaron Smith starting and then have Cam Roigard come off the bench to really offer that impact. Number 10, it was the debate at the start of the Rugby Championship, Richie Mo'unga or Damian McKenzie. I think throughout the year, it's slowly been answering itself. They have a lot more of a plan with Mo'unga at 10 than they do with McKenzie at 10. So that is why I've gone with Richie Mo'unga as my starting number 10 for this Rugby World Cup. Although that is with the reasoning that Damian McKenzie is on my bench. Because normally when Richie Mo'unga's in the starting lineup, they don't actually have McKenzie as an option coming off the reserves bench. Mainly because they feel they've got enough fly half cover with Beauden Barrett playing 15. But I would still have McKenzie in there somewhere just because late in a game, we saw it for the Chiefs. The man is able to have an impact in those final moments. But Mo'unga's kicking, I feel like that is what's really given him the edge, as well as his general play throughout the Rugby Championship. Moving on to the centres now. This is a little bit trickier because in the last game up against the Boks, we didn't really get to see a huge amount from these two, but I believe it's still the best option that the All Blacks can go with in that 12 and 13 combo. So that is number 12, Jordie Barrett, and number 13, Rieko Ioane. Jordie Barrett, he hasn't actually been taking any of the long kicks recently for the All Blacks, and that might be because they've always been looking to go for the corner rather than taking the points from inside of their own half. He still has that up his sleeve if they do need it in any of the Rugby World Cup games. He's solid under the high ball, got that big boot, not just for the kicking tee, but also for the up and unders. And then on his outside, Rieko Ioane, huge amount of pace there. And at the moment, with the fact that they took Braden Enoa out of the side, the only other real 13 option, I guess you could say, is probably Anton Leonard-Brown, and then maybe at a stretch you could say Lester Fainga'a-Nuku, because he has played outside centre for the Crusaders. So I feel like his spot, in a way, is more secure than Jordie Barrett's, because they also have David Havili as an option at 12, and Anton Leonard-Brown could also switch to go to that inside centre role. Now looking through at the back three, these three positions are probably the ones that have caused the most headaches for the selectors all throughout the Rugby Championship, and also their warm-up game up against the Springboks, mainly because of all of the options that they could go with. They've got Will Jordan, Amoni Narawa, Lester Fainga'a-Nuku, Mark Talia. Sean Stevenson wasn't there for a little bit of the Rugby Championship. They've also got Beauden Barrett. McKenzie could go fullback if needed, and the same can be said about Jordie Barrett. So it makes it very difficult for the coaches to work out what combination will be the best to go with at the back. I forgot Caleb Clark. Moving on to these last three. Number 11, Lester Fainga'a-Nuku. In my starting 15, I would have that size and power on the left wing. I feel like with the other two that I've already got the speed aspect covered. I could have had Mark Talia because of the way he can break through tackles, but I feel like with Lester Fainga'a-Nuku, after watching him throughout Super Rugby Pacific, looking through at some of those other players I've got in the back line, feel like he works quite nicely with Richie Mo'unga, and also just has that real ability of being able to drive the opposition backwards. So it's probably a bit of a 50-50 split between Lester Fainga'a-Nuku and Mark Talia in a lot of people's opinions. That's not even mentioning Amoni Narawa, who is another very dangerous option. But for me, I would go with Lester Fainga'a-Nuku out on that left wing. Out on the right, as much as it pains me to say, I'm going with Will Jordan. Yes, he's playing out of position when he's out on that right wing, but the amount of tries that that man has been able to get while playing out of position makes it very impressive. And that just shows his ability to adapt to wherever he is out on the field. Him and Beauden Barrett seem to work very nicely in terms of those little chip and chases, as long as Beauden Barrett doesn't try and do it every time he touches the ball. But Will Jordan, he's able to chase hard, making good low tackles, and also a huge amount of speed. It's just whether or not they can get that ball out to him enough when he is out on that right wing. And then at number 15, at the start of the year, I wouldn't have put this man at number 15. Throughout the Rugby Championship, he slowly started to grow on me a little bit. And then now that we're here just before the Rugby World Cup, to be honest, I think this is the only option the All Blacks can really go with at number 15, and that is Beauden Barrett. Now, initially a few months ago, I was thinking Will Jordan, number 15. Then out on the right wing, you can go with Mark Talia and Moni Narawa or any of those other outside backs. But based off more recent form, you'll hear me say this quite a bit, except for the last game up against the Springboks. Although saying that, I don't think there were many All Blacks that were able to step up in that game to the level that they would have liked. But Beauden Barrett, as long as he's not just doing those pointless kicks, that is one rule. I'll write it in the contract, make him sign it before the Rugby World Cup, because it's all well and good if it works, but if it doesn't, you're giving the opposition possession back that they can use to their advantage. But what I quite liked about the early stages of the Rugby Championship with the Beauden Barrett-Richie Mo'unga combination was Beauden Barrett was actually joining into the line, almost playing a little bit of a fly half role, with Richie Mo'unga slotting into inside centre, and then also Geordie Barrett was slightly looping around to be further back to cover for that kick. So it seems to be that the chemistry between the players is there. Tactically, it seemed to work very well throughout the Rugby Championship, with the All Blacks taking out the victory. But that is who I would go with at number 15. I know that that's probably one of those positions that some people will say they'd rather see Will Jordan, and that is completely fair enough. But do let me know who you guys would have in your starting XV for the All Blacks heading into this Rugby World Cup. We will be doing this with a few of the other World Cup sides as well. We've already done a video on the Springboks, so be sure to check that out as well. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.